Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our weekly style snack. I hope you had a wonderful week and weekend, and I'm so happy that you're joining me today. It's summer officially, although the weather here is not acting as much like summer as it could be. Today, I am doing a throwback to something that I used to do that was really popular. It was a monthly favorites video that so many of you loved, and I share things that just things I like. They're not necessarily related to fashion or beauty. Sometimes they are, but they're just stuff I like, and I think you might like them too. And since summer is officially here, I'm sharing 5 things that I use and love in the summer. Some of them are old favorites, some of them are new favorites, but they're all things that I use and love. So, the first thing is kind of a beauty item. In the summer, we show more skin than any other time of the year. From bare feet to bare arms, we are bearing a lot. And that means we are even more interested in having smooth, hydrated skin. But it can be more than that. Some suffer with a lot more and struggle a lot more with their skin. When my son developed really severe eczema about 6 months ago, I started looking for answers. Another of my boys has had eczema since he was an infant. So we've tried a lot of things over the years, and I figured out what helped him, but that wasn't my other son's problem. And so the tricks and tips that I had to help one son didn't help the other son. And that meant I had to continue my search. And I happened to mention it. And one of my assistants told me about a cream that she loves and uses for her rosacea. So I ordered it. And all I can say is, wow. Within a couple of days, his arms and legs looked so much better. And soon his skin was smooth and soothed. He loves it. And he is not an emotive kid. He's a very reserved child. He's 14. He's a man boy. And for him to come back to me and say how much he loves it is a really big deal. And as long as he uses it daily, his skin looks great. But beyond how it looks is how it feels. If you've ever suffered from eczema or really dry skin, it's painful, it's itchy, it bleeds. It's this goes way beyond how your skin looks. It has everything to do with how it feels, but it can be something that the appearance of it can also make you self-conscious. And in the summer, we see a lot of skin. So it can sting a little when you put it on a raw patch. I think that's true of just about anything you put on eczema, though, but that does go away quickly because the skin healed so quickly for him, it stopped stinging, really. And he used it twice a day at first, but I think he's using it once a day now. He's off at camp right now, so I can't ask him how he's using it right now. We only get to talk to them on Sundays. So, and because he's very private, he doesn't want me to share any before or afters, even of his arms or legs. So I'm not going to do that, but you can just take my word for it. He has had amazing results. And hold on now. Where's my share button? There it is. This is what it's called. Thanks, honey. My other honey brought me my water bottle that has mud all over it because we were digging in the garden last night and I haven't washed out the outside. This is what it is. It's called Athena Natural Wellness Healing Cream. And since he's not here to give me his personal testimonial, I asked my assistant for her thoughts on how she uses it for her rosacea. And this is what she shared. I use a very small amount at a time, just dab on my finger after washing my hands and face. I feel that's really important. And then I apply it to my entire face, usually a dab for my right side, a dab for my left, and a dab for my forehead. Massage it in well. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to soak in fully. It feels really heavy at first. I almost hated it right off the bat because of that. But once it sets, it feels amazing and really is a deep moisturizer. The shea butter doesn't feel greasy to me. I've put it on without washing my face first, and I feel like it was oilier due to my skin and not the lotion. For me, it keeps my rosacea at bay and reduces redness. I usually wait a good half hour before adding anything else to my face after that. I use it after I shower, which is morning, afternoon, or night, depending on the day. If I'm having more of a rosacea flare, I'll use it twice a day, morning and night. I have used it on my hands and elbows, but not often. So I can tell you, because we have Zoom meetings, right? She lives in a different state than I do. I had no idea she had rosacea. I've never seen any hint of it. So it's obviously working really well for her. My son has been using the lemon verbena flavor version scent. And, I don't know what you call it, formula, because that was the only one they had in stock when I ordered it. She uses the peppermint and lavender. I was going to order the peppermint and lavender just because that was the one she was using. But and, they didn't. It was out. It's back in stock now. The smell is pretty subtle. It's not anything overwhelming or overpowering. It's the lemon verbena is what I can speak to. It's also not super girly, because I can tell you he would not. I think he would suffer for the rest of his life before he wore something that smelled like a girl. He's just that way. I think maybe that's not uncommon. But so it doesn't have a very strong, I've never been able to smell it on him. And he puts it on in the morning before school, and I give him a big hug before he leaves for school, and I've never been able to smell it on him. So if you have any questions, leave them for me in the comments, and then we will talk about them at the end. But I know eczema and rosacea are a huge problem for a lot of people. So if it is for you, let us know. Like, I know that I've watched my boys suffer from it. I've never personally experienced it, but as a mom, it's heartbreaking to watch your child scratch and itch, and the pain and the bleeding, and it's awful. I mean, you would do anything to end that for them. And so I really hope this helps a lot of you. And if you know anyone who's suffering from that, please share, because I mean, I can't tell you how many products we tried when my son, the first son, was an infant. It started within the first couple of months of his birth. So it was horrible. Okay, let's move on to the second thing. In college, I worked at a Brazilian churrascaria, where it's a restaurant where they bring around all the meats you can eat and carve them onto your plate. And during the cold months, we were hopping, like lines around the outside, right? But once the temperatures rose, it was a ghost town. No one wanted to eat that much meat when it was hot outside. It felt heavy. And something about summer heat makes us feel even more sensitive to what goes into our stomachs. I personally suffer from reflux, and what bothers me in the winter makes me miserable in the summer heat. And these symptoms seem to be worse. The racing up and down my throat, the surprise burps, the bloating, the throat clearing, the froggy voice. And even though I take a supplement for it, with all my meals, and it helps with all my other meals. This one meal was impervious, my daily protein smoothie. And years ago, I switched from regular milk to almond milk because of it. And that made it better, but it has continued to be a problem. So recently, I tried oat milk, and my reflux got so much better after that. It's only been a couple of weeks, I think, but I noticed an immediate difference, and I stopped buying the almond milk. So I get it at the store. I don't know if there's anything special about this particular brand. It's Califia Farms, it's just what they had at Kroger, but you can also get it online. Apparently, I just found out. So I'm probably going to add it to my subscribe and save just for the simplicity of it. I've tried, there have been times I've run out of almond milk. Well, this is what happened. This is how I was wondering what it was in my smoothie that was really bothering me. I didn't know if it was the protein powder or the sun butter or something else. And one day I was out of almond milk. And so I was like, I'll just drink it with water. I mean, how bad can it be? It's not terrible with water, but there is just something creamier about it when you've got some kind of a milk in there. And I didn't have any reflux that day from that meal. And that's when I was like, it's the almond milk. I don't really want to make this with water every day. Like, just a little something creamy really does add to the texture. So I'm trying to remember who suggested it. Somebody suggested it to me. Why don't you try oat milk? And I'd never heard of it. Never looked for it. But it's good. I can eat it with my granola, like anything that you would want milk in. So I do like it. I've never tried drinking it plain, but I didn't drink the almond milk plain either. I'm sure it's fine. It tastes fine in my smoothie. And my girls were drinking it, or were eating it with their granola yesterday, and they would complain if it was gross, trust me. So the next thing I want to share with you is, it's really personal, actually, and it's really personal. Ever since I discovered Brooke Castillo's Life Coach School podcast, I have felt so empowered to heal myself on a basic level and become the person I want to be. And I shared her podcast with you a few years ago in one of those favorite things videos. And so many of you have come back to me to say it was a life-changing for you the way it was for me. And that was kind of the beginning of a journey for me that will continue for the rest of my life. How do I say it? It was so possible, doable, and on one hand simple, and on the other hand takes effort. I just felt so empowered and uplifting. It's uplifting at the same time. And I had never really gotten into any kind of a self-help kind of thing in that way before. And so it was really I've always believed in, self-improvement and all those things, but I had never really gone down that path in that way, like books and things like that. And even though I have gotten so much from her podcast, and I'm still very wary of other self-help books or podcasts of unknown sources. Like, I have a very limited list of resources that I listen to and like. And when someone else brings something like that up, I'm just like, okay, that's really good for you. I'm sure it's great. Moving on. And so last summer, one of my really dear friends started talking to me about a book, one of those books. And I was like, that's really nice. I'm sure it's very lovely. It sounds excellent. I bet it was moving and powerful. She knew she was being dismissed and I was not paying attention. And she felt so strongly about how powerful this book was. She sent me some pictures. She took pictures with her phone of the pages from one of the chapters. And the chapters were really short. I mean, some of them were like a page and a half. And this one, I think, was 10 pages. And she texted it to me. And that chapter turned my world upside down. It was so powerful. I spent a weekend crying and journaling when I was supposed to be packing and moving across the country. Like I couldn't do anything else. I was so I don't have fully the words, but so I ordered the book, obviously, and then I left it on my night table unopened because I was equal parts very drawn to her story and what she had to say, and terrified to open it and myself up again. I could not get tossed and turned that way. Every time I read a chapter, I couldn't fall apart, and so I've read it in little bits, like a chapter a week. And like I said, some of these chapters are like a page and a half. And reread the bits that I've read before moving on to new bits. I know a lot of people read it straight through. I was not prepared to do that. And underlining all of my favorite parts. I've shared it with friends. I've sent it as a gift. And I wish I could sit here and read you all my favorite parts. I would probably be crying if I did. It's so unbelievably well written, powerful, funny, tragic, vulnerable, raw, honest, and hard. It's called Untamed. It's written by Glennon Doyle. And if any of you have read that, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, because I really kind of want to start a book club about it. This is not like one of those hidden gems that no one else has heard about. I think everyone else had heard about it but me. And suddenly, I was hearing about it from everywhere else. And I'm sure people were talking about it before, and I just kind of let it go right over and be like, I'm not paying attention. Like, I didn't hear anything you just said. So it's so good. I have it here. And as I was preparing for this, I was like, gosh, should I read in one of my favorite sections? And then I was like, but which one do I do? And how do I just pick one? I mean, oh my gosh. So I think I am going to just share one paragraph. I had a hard time picking one, but this is just one, and it's when I was a child, I felt what I needed to feel, and I followed my gut, and I planned only from my imagination. I was wild until I was tamed by shame, until I started hiding and numbing my feelings for fear of being too much, until I started deferring to others' advice instead of trusting my own intuition, until I became convinced that my imagination was ridiculous and my desires were selfish, until I surrendered myself to the cages of others' expectations, cultural mandates, and institutional allegiances, until I buried who I was in order to become what I should be. I lost myself when I learned how to please. And this is something that we talk about on this channel, right? That we talk about here, that the the shoulds that are put upon us by society, by the media, by those around us, and that we do what others want us to do. And obviously we cannot all run wild and run red lights. And, like, there are some things that laws are there for a reason, right? The whole 10 Commandments those are pretty basic rules that everyone should follow. But there's a whole lot of stuff that we are shamed for, about who we are and how we are, that we bury. And her story of what that looked like and how that has affected her and how she kind of woke up. She's had a very hard life. Like, she's lived a very hard life. Anyway, but it's also really entertaining. Like, the reason that it has been so hard for me to read was just because of how powerful the effect was, and not because I was bored. Like, it's riveting, but I just had to stop, and just because, like, I need to think about what I just read. I need time to process that. Not because it's complicated or like textbooky, but because it's powerful, and I just need time to. I can't just gloss past that page and a half. I really need to think about it. It's been life-changing for me, in a good way. And anyway, I think everyone should read this book. It's not appropriate for younger ones. Like, I wouldn't have my 14-year-old daughter read this as it is, because there are definitely some adult themes in it. But I share the messages in conversations with her, with my family. It has directed conversations that I am having with my husband. Like, I've read a lot of, I basically have just sat down and read him entire chapters, like, because I'm like, I could try to sum it up, but my summary would be just as long, and she said it so much better, so I'm just going to read it to you. And so he then is reading it also. So it has really directed a lot of conversations that we're having with our kids, and it's changed my parenting. It's not a parenting book, but it opened my eyes to ways that I am. There's one other section. The ways that I have been unintentionally squelching and squashing specifically one of my children, not obviously well-intentioned, right? I thought I was doing the right thing, but after reading this, I could see how I was trying to make her fit a mold. So this is okay. I'm just gonna read you one more part, and then I promise I'm gonna stop. Maybe we should have a whole thing, like we should have maybe a little book club about this, because I have a lot to say about it. But her mom said about Glennon, "I have not seen my daughter this alive since she was 10 years old. My mother watched the spark in my eyes fade during my 10th year. Now, 30 years later, she was witnessing the return of that spark. In the past few months, my entire posture had changed. I looked regal to her and a little scary. And that day I began to ask myself, where did my spark go at 10? How had I lost myself? I've done my research and learned this. 10 is when we learn how to be good girls and real boys. 10 is when children begin to hide who they are in order to become what the world expects them to be. Right around 10 is when we begin to internalize our formal training. 10 is when the world sat me down, told me to be quiet, and pointed to my cages. These are the feelings you are allowed to express. This is how a woman should act. This is the body you must strive for. These are the things you will believe. These are the people you can love. Those are the people you should fear. This is the kind of life you were supposed to want. Make yourself fit. You'll be uncomfortable at first, but don't worry. Eventually, you'll forget you're caged. Soon, this will just feel like life. I wanted to be a good girl, so I tried to control myself. I chose a personality, a body, a faith, and a sexuality so tiny I had to hold my breath to fit myself inside. Then I promptly became very sick. Oh my gosh, and I found myself trying to make her be quiet, mostly just like, calm down, be quiet. That's too loud. You're being too wild, right? It wasn't anything even as big as some of the things that she went through or was experiencing, or parts of her identity that were shut down, but I was constantly shushing this child. Shh, be quiet, sit down, be still, be calm. You're being too wild, too loud, right? Too wild and too loud, according to whom? There are times, my child needs to have appropriate behavior for the situation, but it was all the time. It was all the time, and that's not fair. So, giving her more freedom to be her vibrant self has been a goal of mine, and encouraging her to be who she is. And also, sometimes that means finding the appropriate time and place, right? But I was constantly shushing her. Everyone was. It wasn't just me. The whole world was constantly shushing her, and she has a voice she's allowed to use. So anyway, this has been a really powerful book for me, and I hope some of you find it powerful as well. Okay, this has gone longer than I intended to. So, speaking of books, I have been a lifelong bookworm. The only thing I ever got in trouble for at school was reading in class instead of paying attention because I couldn't put my book down. And there is nothing like summer reading on the deck or the patio, in the garden, at the beach, by the pool. And I love paper books. I love to hold and read paper books. This is a book that I would definitely buy. I have to write in it and mark it and make notes in the margins. But when I travel, I want to take a lot of books. And since I only pack in a carry-on, I don't have room to bring my whole library. And not a lot of the books I like to read are also pleasure reading books just for the fun of it. And I don't mark in those and underline those, and I don't need that. And I also don't like to wrangle my books around water with sunscreen covered hands. And so I was a slow adopter, but I started using an iPad and reading Kindle books, reading electronic books, but I didn't love that either because my iPad is big and it's heavy, and the screen was almost impossible to see in the bright sun, even with it turned all the way up. My iPad's allergic to water. It overheats easily, and the battery does not last a full day by the pool. So my husband also has an iPad, and when he bought himself a Kindle Paperwhite, I was really confused. He's very much a minimalist, and he is not one of those people who is like, new electronic gadget, I want one. Mm-mm. He's not like that at all. And so that was kind of weird for him. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. Maybe his iPad's on the glitch or something. So he asked if I wanted one too. And I was like, no, this is more than what I want. I mean, you had a hard time convincing me to get the iPad. I don't want that either. And then we were at the beach, and once again, my iPad overheated and shut down, and I had nothing to read. And so he lent me his Kindle Paperwhite. And suddenly I understood why he had been trying to convince me to get one for a really long time. It is so, I'm going to wax like poetic again. It is so lightweight. It is so lightweight. Just sitting here and holding it in my hand is nothing. It really weighs no more than my phone. And size-wise, it's a little bigger, but it's very easy to hold like this. I cannot hold my iPad like this. It's small and it fits easily into my smallest bags. And it's so small, I can carry it in one hand. I was going to grab my small bag. So this is my summer crossbody, and it's not huge. It barely fits exactly what I want, and this drops into it easily, just right into the side. So I can take this with me anywhere. So if I'm doing carpool and lots of drop-offs and pickups, and I know I'm going to be sitting and waiting, just drop this in there, and it's doesn't need its own diaper bag. When we took our daughter to Harry Potter World at Universal Studios in Atlanta, she was really struggling with the waiting patiently in line for hours at a time part. So on day 2, I threw this in my little bag, and while we stood in line at the park, I read Harry Potter to her while we waited, and it was magical for a lot of reasons. One, I mean, we love these books. We have been reading them together, and the entertainment factor. It was a time that we got to spend together, doing something we loved. It was on theme, which was just a bonus, right? And it was a way to keep us both entertained. And so instead of getting out of line because she doesn't want to wait to ride the ride and missing out on the experience that she had been waiting for so long for, we would just read as we went. She would stand next to me and she'd watch the pages with me, right? I mean, she's not a baby. She can read it herself, but that connection of me reading it to her, we were doing something together. We were still spending time together rather than just saying, here you go, be quiet. Which it's reading a book. I would never be upset about my kids love to read like I do, so they read all the time, but we were able to do this together, and that made the trip so much fun. The waiting was not lost time for us, you know? So what else I love about it is you can see the screen in direct sunlight shining on my screen. There's no, it's perfect. It's perfect. I don't have to squint. I don't have to try to get it in the shade. Like my iPad, I turn the light all the way up and I can hardly see it in the sun. I'm always trying to get it in the shade. There's no glare on the screen, and all it takes is a tap to turn the page. I'm not scrolling. I just tap it. The battery. So, okay, those are all amazing things, but there are actually 3 more features that are my favorite. The battery lasts for weeks, not hours, weeks. So you know how many times I've had to stop reading because my Kindle battery or my iPad battery died? This has 28 hours of battery life of continuous usage. Like if I stayed awake and read for 28 hours, that's when my battery would finally die. And without constant use, it can last for weeks. So my kids are huge readers. And I was asking my daughter right before I came on, because I don't have as much time to read right now as I wish I did. And I was like, Brinley, how often do you recharge your battery? And she's like, maybe once a week. And she reads a lot. So that's huge. It doesn't overheat. That's also a huge problem for me at the beach, in the pool, or just sitting outside. My iPad has shut down several times because of overheating, and I swear it's a conspiracy to do it at the best part. And I'm like, no. And it's waterproof. It is waterproof. So, hello, splashing water. I'm not afraid of you. I can read in the tub without fear of ruining paper pages or expensive electronics. All this Kindle Paperwhite does is books. You can read or listen to audiobooks. You can use Bluetooth headphones, or there's a place to plug in. There's no browser. There's no internet browser. It connects to the internet only to be able to download books, but there's no internet browser. There are no games. There's no video watching or anything else. All it does is books. And that is why we also got them for our kids. We have always limited their access to electronics. And by limited, I mean no TV, tablets, or video games, except they can watch TV on Saturday morning until my husband and I get up, which is come out of our room, which is tragically early. Like, we're usually out of our room by 8 at the latest. Family movie nights, or they can earn it by doing extra chores outside of their normal chores. And I'm not like, if you take out the trash, you can play an hour of Xbox. No, these are big jobs. They have to do big jobs to get not a whole lot of time. In fact, my daughter's summer job has been helping me out, being my assistant during the day while school's out. I need her to watch her little sisters, make them lunch, help them get through their chores, help me get them ready for swim team before we leave in the morning. Today she organized the laundry room and cleaned out the car. Like, she's doing big stuff. It's her summer job. And I asked her if she wanted me to pay her with money or Xbox time. And she chose Xbox time because they just so rarely, they just cannot get to it whenever they want to. And almost all the time we offer to pay our kids money, and they're 14, 13, 11, and 8. 9 times out of 10, they choose Xbox time. They want to play Minecraft. Or no, that's not on the Xbox. Whatever Minecraft is on. Is that on PlayStation? I don't like video games, so I don't really care. Whatever they're on, that's what they ask for payment. And I'm like, okay. And it's not like a lot. Anyway, so that is why we got our kids these Kindles, because they love to read. And many of their books have literally been read to shreds. Like, they read them over and over and over again, and they have fallen to pieces and then they'll tape them back together. But then they need replacing. And now they can read on their Kindles whenever they want, because we had tablets for them that they were allowed to use if they earned it, or if we were on a road trip for more than 4 hours, which when we were driving back and forth across the country was a lifesaver. Like, I wish I'd had that when I was a kid on road trips. That was the only time they were allowed to have them. We kept them, and they had passwords on them. So they weren't allowed to read books on them because the temptation, it's just kind of too much to ask sometimes of say, okay, but don't, play any video games and don't watch videos. And, it's just too much to ask of children. And so they couldn't read electronic books. But on this, they can have these. They don't have to turn these into us, because all they can do is read books. And we don't have to worry about them accessing YouTube, downloading and playing video games or movies. And we set up, so one reason we waited so long to do this was because there was no way on our Amazon account to separate our books from their books. And not all of our books are appropriate for kids to read. And so and Amazon, we've looked into this, and Amazon was like, no, you can't. They're just all the books in the library are available to all your users. So what we ended up doing was we set up a separate Amazon account just for ordering their electronic books. And so only kid books are downloaded and purchased. That's all that account is for. And because all the Kindles are connected to that, all of their Kindles are connected to that Amazon account. And so we see what they're reading, right? And then they can all share. And that was another thing. Like they ask for books for Christmas and birthdays, and so if we give this child this series, but they all want to read it, and they're like, those are my books. You can't read them. Which that's true. I mean, they're theirs, but the other kids want to read them, and I don't want to buy 6 copies of all these books. So this way, everybody can read the same books, no problem. And then the last thing is these are far, far less expensive than iPads, and they do go on sale for even better deals. So we added the link. There are different ones, like there's different versions that you can get, but we link to the one that we have. And right now, I think there's a special deal, like they're 20% off if you get 2 or more or something. Buy 2, get 20% off both is the current special. And so it was something like that when we bought the ones for the kids for Christmas. They were having a special deal like that. That's also when I got mine finally. That brings me to the last one. Now that there are 8 of us reading digital books, what has that done to our budget? Because we read a lot of books. The truth is not much. There's the public library, right? And there are a lot of books that you can now download digitally through your local library. However, they still have limited number of downloads at a time. Limited number of patrons can download them at a time. So you still have to be on a waiting list or on a hold list, and that can last for months, which is fine. Sometimes you can just wait. But we found it worth our while to join Kindle Unlimited. And we started out with a free trial to see if we would actually use it, just my husband and I, before we even got these for the kids. And we were reading our books. And we found out that just between the 2 of us, we used it. And it's basically like a paid library where nothing is ever checked out. And you don't ever have to go on a waiting list. I don't think. I've never experienced that anyway. And so it's $10 a month, and we can have 10 books out at a time. And if we want another book, we just have to return one. So even as a family of 8, it works out just fine. I've tried other things that are similar to this, and the selection never included anything I wanted to read ever. Like none of the good books. And so like that day when we were in Harry Potter world, and I've owned the hard copy books for, decades. And it would have really it would have been worth it to buy the digital version, but I would have still been a little annoyed, like, I have this book at home. But it was part of Kindle Unlimited. So I just downloaded the one we were reading at the time and found our spot, and off we went. And sometimes it includes audiobooks. It depends on the book and if there is an audiobook. And it also includes magazine subscriptions. You can download popular magazines as part of your Kindle Unlimited thing. And so it will work on your iPad and your iPhone through the Kindle reading app. So we've been using Kindle Unlimited since before I had this. I was using the Kindle Unlimited through the Kindle reading app on my iPad and on my iPhone. And you can also use it with Androids. And right now, the Kindle Unlimited services available in the US, UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, India, China, Japan, Brazil, Mexico, Canada, and Australia. And we added a link to the Kindle Unlimited here. That one will work for the US, and for the other countries, you'll need to go through your local Amazon marketplace. So Amazon Canada is where you would sign up for it there. But And they do plan to expand to other countries according to their website. But I love this. My kids love this. And it has been so nice because they read a lot. And especially in the summer, they read a lot. So it's nice that I don't have to police it. We can see exactly which books they're getting through Kindle Unlimited, and what they're reading, right? And we're not worried about them getting into other things that we don't want them to get into. So, and even there was a book my son wanted for his birthday. It was a kind of a novella that came. It was a novella that comes between two of the main novels in this series. It's one of the things he asked for his birthday, and it was only available as a digital book. You can't buy it in a hard copy. And so that was kind of when we're like, well, I guess it's time. And I think more and more books might end up going that direction. And it would have been really sad for him to miss, because he's obsessed with this series, for him to miss out on this really cool bonus. He would have not died, right? But he's really into this book series, and that was the only way he would get it. And it was the only thing he wanted for his birthday was one other book series. That's just my kids. That's all they ask for is books and Legos. Is I really want this book, and to be able to give it to him and then not have to be like, there are other consequences. This is scary because da, 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 da. So anyway, I hope that you are already enjoying your summer as it gets started, and that these recommendations help you make the most of the rest of your summer. They're things that have genuinely made a difference for us. And I can't wait to hear, for those of you who already have these things and love them, or try them and love them. I hope to hear from you. That was not supposed to take all that time. I went on and on about a few things I wasn't supposed to. I talked more. Anyway, I added to the, you know what I'm saying. I get really excited about some things, obviously. So Kathy's here. She says, hi, Kathy. See, that question was already answered. Barbara says, I'm just reading Untamed, but as you in little parts. Just had the one called The Big Hurt in German. Don't know the English title of the chapter. It was kind of the hardest thing I have ever read. I did not know someone but me knows this hurting. Oh my gosh, Barbara. If it's the chapter I think it is, that's the one my friend sent to me, and that totally unraveled me. And if it's the one I think it is, let's see, The Big Hurt. It could be the Aches chapter, part 3, the chapter called Aches. If that's the one that I think that's the one you're talking about, that is the chapter she sent to me. It's like 10, let's see, page 81 to 89. So it's like 8 pages. And that's the one that just totally unraveled me. I had no idea that other people did that, experience that the way I do. And yeah, it was so powerful. So if any of you read this book, that was the one that did it. That was the one that totally, but the prologue, like just the prologue was just also maybe the other most powerful. And it's only a total of 3 pages. Totally like, oh my gosh. Oh, wow. Anyway, I could go on. I can talk about this for hours. Let's see. One of you says, I wondered if this was the book you were talking about. I'm not usually a self-help reader, but this was one of the most powerful books I've read this year. Yeah. And it's one of those things that you hear other people, and you're like, yeah, I'm sure it's really good. And then you read it and you're like, your heart stops. You just even read a little part of it and you're like, there's some, like Barbara said, I did not know someone out there was also experiencing this the way I am. And I think all of us are experiencing this and swallowing it and suffering alone. And we don't have to suffer and we don't have to be alone. And then Kathy says, I always am that way about those kind of books. I need to soak and live it for a bit so that I really get it. And then somebody else says, I agree. Yes. Yeah, like this is not, I mean, you could just breathe. I don't know how, well, I guess it's possible to breeze through this. It's a very good read. Like it reads, it's so like there's some books in this genre that it's very textbooky, you know what I mean? And they're throwing a lot of jargon at you and you're like, yes, this is valuable information, but it's like reading a science textbook and you're like, dry as bone. It's valuable, but it lost me. I'm not at all interested. This is a very engaging, interesting story. It's not linear. She bounces around a lot. But each chapter is kind of can stand alone, and yet they are all part of a story. So it's not because it's not interesting. It's just that I need time to absorb it and think about what I just read. So I could just sit down and knock this out for purely entertainment wise, yes, but wow, that's a big meal to digest. And then Kathy says, you reminded me about how much I love reading books. I love to read. Oh, I love to read. And then see, one of you says, I would love a book club with all of us or a reading list. I'm so bad on choosing new books. Oh, I mean, this book in particular, I mean, I have no doubt there are 5 million book club conversations going on about this book. This is not like an April special. The very first person to think about maybe having a book club related to this book. I'm sure every book club has read this book and talked about it. And if they haven't, they will soon. It's just so powerful. I mean, this is the kind of thing we would have to discuss like a chapter a week, or we would, and we could discuss it for hours. You know what I mean? So, and then I read books with my boys and with my kids. Like I read, they pick the books and then I read them with them. And I started with my boys, maybe when they were 10, maybe 11. We started out reading Ranger's Apprentice series together. Like they would read them and then I would read them separately, but we would just have so much to talk about, right? And these inside jokes and, you know, references. And it was just something that we were really able to connect over, and we still do it. And so they stack books on my night table. I just finished reading the Way of Kings series. The Way of Kings is the first book. Those are some long books. They're like 1,200, 1,300 each. I've read 4. I read the 4 that are out. And then I read one of the little novellas in between. There's a second one, the one my son wanted for his birthday. I haven't read that one yet because I started on a series with my daughter. And then I was reading Harry Potter with another daughter. And then my oldest daughter she wanted me to read her books. And so now I'm reading one of her series. And that one is called, I don't know the name of the series off the top of my head. I just started it, but the first book is called Cinder, and it's kind of like a sci-fi Cinderella story. It's a Cinderella story in a sci-fi world. Cinderella is a cyborg, or she's part machine, part human. And then each of the books is a fairy tale princess character, but the stories all tie together. Definitely more of a young adult reading. Girly book. Well, I mean, all these books are really meant for young adults and kids, but anyway, so it's just fun to share this. It's one of the ways I love to connect with my kids over our love of reading and then reading the same books together. Rachel says, I love reading too. My husband asked me yesterday, don't you ever get tired of reading? I said, no, it's so addicting. Unfortunately, I have no self-control with reading if it's a good book. I know. And I have the same problem. So what I do is I set my reading time that it has to end at a time when I don't have a choice. So like leaving to pick up my child from somewhere, like I have to put down my book. I'm not going to not pick up my kid, right? And so I set it at a time when I don't have any choice but to stop what I'm doing, because and dinner is not a good one. Like I'll be like, no, I'll wait and make dinner. Dinner is not going to take as long as I thought. I'm going to start later. No, making dinner is not a good one. But leaving to go pick up my kids from school or take from the bus stop or something like that, I set my reading time up around that, so I have to. And going to sleep also is not one. Like bedtime is not a good shut off point for me. I spent my life staying up all my reading books. That's not a good one. So that's how I handle it, because I have an almost impossible time putting down books myself. Lori says, I love my Kindle Paperwhite. I bought it to read outside on vacation. It's so good. And my husband was like, you need one. And I was like, I do not need one. I've got this thing, my iPad. And I didn't love it. But I was just like, I'm not going to love that anymore. It's just, just like this. But it's not. It's so much better. I don't use my iPad at all anymore. Let's see. One of you says, it took several years for my husband to convince me to switch to a Kindle. I received my first one in 2012 and I haven't looked back since. I love it. It is so much better than packing a lot of books for a trip. Plus, my husband doesn't let me forget that he was right, Melinda. Oh, yeah. Well, there's that. But so we had other Kindles that you could use, like videos and games and stuff. And that was what our kids had that we kept with passwords on them and put away. This Kindle Paperwhite, I don't know how long these have been out. Maybe they've been out that long and I just had no idea. This is only books. And so it's even lighter than those other ones. Nanette says, I used to read on my iPad too. The glare sitting outside was too much. Plus the blue light was keeping me up at night. I love my Kindle Paperwhite. I take it everywhere. That's the one. Oh, I was in the middle of writing this. And that, you're right. It was the blue light. That was the one I didn't write. I got interrupted and I lost my thought. The blue light. No blue light. And blue light is a thing. I thought it was snake oil, but it's true. See, somebody else says, I love my Paperwhite. It just says Facebook user. There's a link at the top that if you click it, I should be able to see your name. Otherwise, it says Facebook user. And that's when if I don't call you by your name, that's why. So you can either click the link or just sign it. Say, love, Jessica. And I'll know it's for you. Kathy says, I love the range of your things you're loving this summer. Well, thank you. I was trying to think about I have a whole list of things. I've been keeping lists of things to share with you for a while now. And this morning I was like, do I want to do a theme? Like all beauty products or all food things or all things I use to make my smoothie or all this or all that. And I decided to do, I ended up changing it. I was only going to talk about the book. And then I was like, oh, but wait, I love to read on my Kindle. Oh, and then they know about Kindle Unlimited. So this one kind of ended up theming with the books, but it didn't start out that way. So yeah, they usually are things that are less beauty and clothing related and more just other stuff that I really love. We just don't ever have any other reason to talk about them except this. Let's see. Sorry, they all bumped up on me. Got to get back to where I was. Okay. Oh no, that was the one I read. Elaine says, reading out loud as a family is a wonderful activity. Oh, it is. And in fact, so on those car rides, but we hadn't gone on a road trip since a year ago, right? And they just had their regular Kindles and they would play video games or whatever, like Minecraft and stuff. Because they didn't have any anyway. And then they would die right around the witching hour when we're hungry. We're all sick of being in the car and we've got hours to go before we stop at the hotel. And so I started reading out loud on our car trips too. That was really hard on my voice because, there's 8 of us and the car is enormous and I'm sitting in the front seat and trying to project my voice forward because it's A, not safe for me to turn around and face the back, and B, terrible for my back and neck. And so I was having to speak really loud to get my voice to go from here back there. But it was magic, even on these older children, for me to be reading. I read Harry Potter to them. But I read Harry Potter with my 11-year-old, and right now I'm reading Little House on the Prairie with my 8-year-old. And like we sit down and read together, and then the boys and I read our books separately. But they'll, like, if I'm sitting in the room reading, in the family room reading to one of the girls, the other kids will just come and sit down quietly and listen to me read because they love Harry Potter too. And who doesn't love a Little House on the Prairie, right? Let's talk about some pig bladder kickball. So yeah, reading together is so fun. See, one of you says, are you reading The Last Apothecary? I just finished it yesterday. Okay, I'm not, but I want to. This is the save screen. This is the sleep screen on my Kindle. And so it's giving me a recommendation. And I haven't had time to read lately, so I haven't been reading. Well, I've been reading, I've been listening to audiobooks because I haven't had any time to read. And so I listen to audiobooks while I'm getting ready. And that's how I made it through the Way of Kings series. That would never have happened. Like, they've been trying to get me to read it since last summer. And I was like, I literally am not sleeping. I don't even have time to read books. So I've been listening to audiobooks. And then my daughter's books that I started reading, they're paper books. And so I'm reading those. Although maybe I'll see if they've got that on here. That's easier to read. I didn't even think about that. She just handed me a book and I was like, oh, open the book and read, automatic reaction. And then, so this has been tucked into my drawer. And when I woke it up, this is what was on there. And I read the description and I was like, a secret network of women, a legacy of poison and revenge. I need to read that. And I'm going to write that down. So you just finished it yesterday. You'll have to tell me if it's good, because although when am I going to get to read a book I want to read? My stack for my kids is so big. And then my husband's like, do I get in the line? And I'm like, do I get in the line? I want in the line. So I do, but this sounds really good. I really want to read it. Kathy says, OMG, waterproof. I know. I love a bath, but I can't just sit there and do nothing in the bath and like close my eyes and meditate. I need entertainment. And I never read because, wet fingers on a book, or what if I dropped my iPad? So yeah, totally in the bath. Kathy says, thanks for pointing out the features. Well, I was a really hard sell myself. And I was like, I don't want one. I do not want. My husband kept offering, do you want me to get you one? And I was like, no, why would I want that? I have an iPad that I don't actually like to use. So why would I want that too? And it took using his for me to get it. And he's like, it's so light. And I'm like, whatever. I don't care. He's like, and I was like, ah. And so it was a hard sell for me because I already had something. So I felt like he needed to know. Audrey says, how does your Kindle survive without a case? So I asked my husband, I was like, okay, I guess I need a case. I'm going to get cases for all the kids. And he was like, no, you really don't. That kind of defeats the purpose of its being light and very thin. See how thin it is and easy to drop in your purse? He's like, it's just going to get bulky and heavy. They're pretty bulletproof. I mean, obviously you don't want to step on it or back over it with a car or throw it off a building. But our kids are not so gentle, especially the younger ones. And it doesn't have the same delicate kind of screen. I don't know how well you can see that. It's just sturdier than your eye. It doesn't have that really high, there's no color. It's black and white, right? It's just not the same kind of screen you would have on your iPad. We haven't had any trouble with scratches. I'm not saying it can't happen, but we don't have any cases on it. They do come in colors, but I think all of us have black because I didn't like any of the colors. Marion says, I love Kindle Unlimited. I do too. I was a little hesitant because I was like, this feels like maybe Columbia House Records and the 10 10 CDs for a penny thing. And then I'm going to be stuck and I'm never going to use it. But no, we use it all the time and you can cancel whatever you want to, and it's just not a big deal. Rachel says, Kindle Unlimited has been amazing for me. I think it's worth it. And sometimes they give you special deals to continue your subscription. Yeah, I mean, it's $10 a month. And most books, even if you bought one book a month, they usually fall in that $10 to $15 range. So it's been worth it for me. And then with 8 of us using it now, like obviously. The only problem we had was some of our kids like to read multiple books at the same time, which I'm not that way. And they were returning each other's books to get more of their own books. And I'm like, no, okay, no, we're not doing this. You each get one book at a time. And if you want a different book, then you need to turn in your own book. You cannot turn in your brother's book. So you can have 2. We're not doing that. One at a time. Okay. That was the rule. Like, yes. Stickers. Barbara said that's it. Okay, so that was the chapter. Yes, totally undid me. I mean, what an introduction, right? She didn't go easy on me. She went and pulled out the cannon and aimed it right at me, and I stood there with open arms and let her do it. But it was worth it. Elaine says, I missed it. What book is it? It's Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And we linked to it up above somewhere. Oh, right after you asked. Thank you. Did you hear she has a workbook to accompany Untamed coming out in November? No. But I can tell you I have filled pages of feelings and thoughts over. So no, that will be fascinating in November. Why do we have to wait? I know why we have to wait. It's a lot of work, but oh my gosh. And I'm going to go, if that's on pre-order, I'm going to go pre-order. Judith says, I can't wait to get this book. It sounds compelling. Oh, Judith, this is right up your alley. It's right up your alley. And I apologize in advance for the meltdown, but it's worth it. It's so powerful. Rachel says, Cinder is the Lunar Chronicles. I love those books. Okay, yes, thank you. The Lunar Chronicles. And when my daughter was telling me about them, I was like, couldn't you have picked something else, please? But it's actually been fairly entertaining. I mean, obviously she's gonna get the prince. It's Cinderella. We all know that. But it's it's a unique take on a classic. And I love classics and I love unique takes on classics. So I guess it's right up my alley. I'm about halfway done with that one. And I mean, it's not a life-changing book, but it's entertaining, and that is its purpose. And now I will be able to speak Lunar Chronicles, the language, with my daughter, and that's just another way that we can connect. Judith says, I love to read since I was very young. I know. Couldn't pull the books out of my hands. Michelle says, I used to read by flashlight under the covers until dawn when I was in high school, until I got my own room. All through university, I'd read until dawn on weekends. Now I do not read in bed for that reason. I need my sleep more. Oh my gosh, Michelle. So did I, except I didn't even bother with a flashlight. My sister and I shared a room, and I just left a lamp on. She just slept anyway. And I stopped reading like that in college because I was not going to do well in my classes. Like, for me, it was all or nothing. Either I can read with abandon, or I can't read at all. And so I quit reading for a long time. And then finally I was like, I cannot be like this. That's when I set up this reading time, that I would set it up to end at a time when I could not continue. Like, oh, I'm just going to read to the end of this page. Just when I get to the end of the chapter, oh no, this page didn't end on a full paragraph. No, I have to leave and go get my kids. So the book is going down, but I get it. And yeah, I need my sleep. Judith says, I feel possessed when I'm buried in a book. It's a love-hate thing. If you're that way, you just are. Michelle says, just returned from cataract surgery, looking forward to being able to read more easily again. Well, Michelle, I hope that went well for you. My husband had cataract surgery a couple of years ago. So that's life-changing to be able to see out of that eye again. So I'm so happy for you that you got that. And I hope that you have a quick and easy recovery. Judith says, by the way, I didn't see the click to reveal my name. Well, you've already clicked it. So I can see your name, Judith. So you must have clicked it sometime. Sometimes you, like if your cookies get cleared on your browser, you have to redo it. But I can see you, Judith. Lisa says, this is such a great video. Really enjoy hearing about what you love and use and the hows and whys. I vote you do this a couple of times a year. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Lisa. I used to do it once a month, and I enjoyed it as well because there are a lot of things that I love to use, and I just don't have a reason to talk about them because a month, but I would like to do them more. And it's me and that all or nothing mentality. Like if I can't do it every month, I'm just going to do it. And I get stuck in that. So maybe I'll do one a season. Although I've got some other summer stuff I want to share with you. Like my list is like this long of stuff, and I had a hard time narrowing it down. Rachel says, same. It's like an addiction. I can't stop. All those memes about reading are so mean. Bookworms unite. Kim says, I always fall asleep when I listen to audiobooks. Love, Kim. Thanks for signing me, Kim. With the black heart and everything. I listen to audiobooks while I'm doing something. So I listen to them while I'm getting ready for the day or I'm getting unready at night. I listen to them in the shower. Listen to them while I garden. Listen to them while I drive. But if you ask me to sit on a chair and listen to an audiobook with nothing else to occupy my hands or anything, or I don't know, like if I need a mindless task and an audiobook, washing dishes, cleaning the kitchen, folding laundry, but I can't just sit. Like if I laid in bed, I would fall asleep, hopefully. Kathy says, Columbia's Health Records. That was so fun in college. That was how I built my DVD collection. Well, first my cassette tape collection. And then I had to start all over with the DVDs when those came out. Michelle says, I used to get Book of the Month Club and Columbia Records in university. It's a good thing I didn't discover Book of the Month Club. I spent my babysitting money on books. So this might surprise you, it wasn't clothes. When I was a teenager, my mom would drop us off at the mall and I went to Walden Books and I would stand in there for hours and read the back of books and then pick some. Finally, that was how I first came upon the Gaston Leroux Phantom of the Opera book. That was the original story that the musical is based on. And so it was just whatever books, because there was no Amazon, right? And there was no internet. So the only books you could get were the books your local bookstore had. And so I would just go to the mall and I didn't buy clothes. I bought books. That's what I spent my money on. Nanette says, I love Amazon and limited books. Yeah, I mean, it really, if you read at least one book a month, it's totally worth it. Rachel says, I just read a cute little series called the Faraway Castle book series your daughter might like. Ooh, that's good. What age daughter? I've got an 8-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 14-year-old. So I'll have to look at that. Ooh, somebody sent the link to the workbook. I'm totally going to pre-order that. Kathy says, I recognize all of your reasons for going on to the next page. Oh, I'll just finish the paragraph. Maybe another page. Oh, I'll finish the chapter. Yeah. Oh, totally. We all make the same excuses. We've all made them up. Marianne says, I listen to audiobooks while I'm walking, hiking, and exercising, and it makes me exercise longer. Win-win. Definitely. Oh, yes. That's an excellent time to do it. Kathy says, I used to love going to Borders and settling in a comfy chair with a book. Oh, gosh. That's a blast from the past. Yeah. Yes, for sure. Well, I knew I was surrounded by awesome people. That's why I love you. You totally get me. Um, so, anyway, once again, I have gone way too long, but this is always so much fun, and I'm glad you enjoyed this. So, we'll have to do this more often because I do have things like this I love to share with you. Let's see. Rachel says probably the 14-year-old, the one who's reading Cinder. Okay, okay, I'll show those to her. Michelle says, I love to binge read book series. Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey has over 25 books. Really? On the third time reading them since university. Paper then, but on e-reader now. I'm going to check those out. I love series too, because every time I finish a book, I'm like, oh my gosh, now I've got to go on Amazon and read the backs of all the books because we're not doing it in the bookstore anymore, right? It takes me forever to pick a new book because it has to be like I'm on such a high from the last one. I don't want to be disappointed by the next one. And that's why I love series because I can just keep going, right? And then my series ends and I'm like, I don't have any books anymore. So I'll check that out. And Kathy says it was fun. Well, good. I'm glad. And for those of you who haven't tried any of these, and if you end up, then I would love to hear about it. Michelle says hers are sci-fi fantasy off-world series. Okay, so then you might like, if you haven't read the Way of Kings series, I'll be honest, I had a really hard time getting into it. And the only reason I persisted was because my boys insisted. There's a lot of world building because it's off world, it's sci-fi ish fantasy, more fantasy than sci-fi, but there's a lot of world building. And I had just finished another series that I really enjoyed that was very different. And I was kind of annoyed that that series was all over, at least for now. And I was just really having a hard time. And plus, I was trying to read it as an actual book, and I was only getting a little at a time. So I was really struggling to get into it. And then I finally started listening to it on audiobook. Michelle, if your boys love science fiction or fantasy, all my boys love all the Brandon Sanderson books. Love them. That's who wrote these books, and he's got multiple series weaving together in from one Cosmere. So this Way of Kings series, the Mistborn series, which I haven't read the Mistborn yet, that's on the stack. There's a bunch of series that he's writing, and they're all merging together as part of the same Cosmere. Yeah, just he's genius, basically. Like, I don't know how he's keeping it all straight, but I finally got into it, and they're really good. So book 5 is coming out next year, and there's supposed to be 10 books in this series. I'll be dead before they're done, or he will be. I don't know. One of us is probably going to die before this is over, but my boys are obsessed with the Brandon Sanderson. He also wrote The Reckoners. That's not the same Cosmere. No, not The Reckoners. Oh shoot, what is that one called? Maybe it's called The Reckoners, but it's not part of the Cosmere. Anyway, he's a great writer. Really, really good. Rachel says the Dragon Jane Austen series by Marie Grace is amazing if you like stuff like that. Okay, I love book recommendations. I keep because my kids are always running out of stuff to read. Michelle says, I'll check out The Way of Kings. My boys love science fiction. Did we already say that? I think maybe we did. Outlander is good. I've read Outlander. And the next book is coming out in November. Go and Tell the Bees I've Gone. I've got it on pre-order. It's coming out. I'm really excited for that to come out. I read that series, and then I read Game of Thrones series. I can't watch violent stuff, and so I can't watch the show, but I really enjoyed the books. And that was the one I had finished right before I started Way of Kings. And I was like, there's no Tyrion. I'm just not interested. Audrey says, Oat Milk Untamed Kindle. What am I missing? The eczema cream and the Kindle Unlimited. So it was the Kindle Paperwhite and then the Kindle Unlimited. You all are responding to other people. Michelle says my boys are 26 and 31 now. Well, that's, you can share that with them. Rachel says book discussion today was amazing. Thank you, April. Well, you're welcome. Thanks for joining me. And maybe we should have like a real book discussion, like of this book. I have so much to say about it. It's really powerful. It's really personal. It's a very personal discussion. It was hard. Sounds silly, but it was hard to share that with you because I was afraid I would start crying again. I get tired of doing that. You might get tired of it too. But it's very personal and private, and yeah. Anyway, but it's so good, right? Carmen says the Nightingale, Lilac Girls, and Lost Roses are amazing. I will check those out. I'm gonna have to get out. When we get off here, I'm going to have to get out my book list and start adding these. Audrey says, got it. Thanks. Next time, 10 favorite things. Oh my gosh, Audrey, I've been on here for almost an hour and a half and we only talked about 5 things. My goal is to be off in 30 minutes and I almost never do it. Or at least be done with my part in 30 minutes and then we can just chat after. But oh my gosh. We'd be here all day if I did 10. I ended up writing 10 today, and I took 5 of them off because I kept adding. I was like, this is out of control. We gotta stop. 5. Michelle says, I'll read all the Outlander books again in time for the new one in November. How will you? I'm a slow reader. I'm a very slow reader. I read to edit, and I don't know how to not do that anymore. I can't read. Like I don't know. I've forgotten how to read fast, and I read really slow. So that would take me forever. If I had nothing else to do, I don't know if I could do it. It was my full-time job. I read. I can't help it. I read to edit. I'm correcting as I go. So. Good for you though. That would be. I would love to reread them. My book list for my kids is too long. I won't get to do that. You can read one Outlander book in a day. I need to take your speed reading course. I have forgotten how to read for speed because I am an editor, right? I've been doing that since college, editing since high school. If you have a speed reading course, please tell me because I can't read fast like that. I read every single word and I read it out loud in my head for editing. It's awful. Barbara wants me to share my book list. Well, it depends on what kind of books. Like the books I read just for myself, the books I read with my children that I've also enjoyed. Books for boys, books for girls, self-help type books. Historical fiction books, like it kind of has tell me what kind of books you want me to tell you about. Audrey says, I'm an editor. I have the same problem. Okay, Audrey, thank you. Because sometimes I feel like my kids are like, why is this taking you so long to read, Mom? Because they fly through books. And I'm like, I'm a slow reader. I'm not a slow person. I just read slow. I don't know how to not read slow anymore. Michelle says, I'm a speed reader. When I try to speed read, I miss really important things like, Dumbledore died. And I'm like, wait, what? I missed it. When did that happen? And I had to go back. I can't do it. Kathy says, check out Jim Quick for speed reading tips. Okay. Barbara says, the ones for yourself. Okay. I will put together a list of things I've read. I've been reading a lot of series, but I like to read series. Books you just enjoyed. Okay. Well, some of the books I've read with my kid, I really have genuinely enjoyed The Way of Kings. Now I would continue reading them on my own. I enjoy the books I've read with my kids. Just you have to remember who the target audience is. Like I really enjoyed the Ranger's Apprentice books. They're targeted to like 12-year-old boys, but they're just really fun books as long as you remember it's for kids and you're not expecting an adult, right? And so I get just as excited about the new ones as they do. And the Brother Band Chronicles, also, that's a companion series to the Ranger's Apprentice, also kind of targeting that same age range, but really good books. And so they're not deep thinking books. They're, you know what I mean. So I do enjoy them on their own for what they are, but they're not the same as like reading Outlander, right? Or the Game of Thrones. Well, no, the Way of Kings is quite complex. It's not it's not as adulty, you know what I mean? But it doesn't feel like a kid's book either, just because it leaves out a lot of the violence and things. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean? So I enjoy them. It's like Harry Potter, right? Harry Potter was written for kids, but I love those books. Michelle says, my husband says I don't get my money's worth out of books because I read so fast. Sharita, if you enjoyed it, you do. Audrey says menus have the best typos. Oh my gosh, they do. We saw one recently. My husband posted it on Facebook. It was really funny. See, someone else says I edit too, and my husband always has to keep me from correcting things like hotel booklets and things. I know. Where's my red pen? I have been so tempted to just like red pen something and hand it back. Just let me help you. It's time for a reprint. I'm going to do you a favor. This one's free. This is really bad. I know. And I know I have my own typos. I put out a lot of content and I miss things. You read things so many times that you just can't see it anymore. But I am far from perfect, but it's so much easier to edit somebody else's stuff. Michelle says Harry Potter books like Outlander are so detailed. Well, so are the Way of Kings books. Like they're very detailed and complex. Anyway, you know what I mean. So you just kind of have to categorize them, right? Like I recognize this was written to target 12-year-old boys, and I can enjoy that on that level, and just enjoy the story and the positivity and everything of it. So, all right, now it really has been an hour and a half. I'm gonna hop off here, and it's called proofreader's disease. Oh, there's a diagnosis for it. There's not a treatment, I'm sure. I'm going to hop off here and let you all get on with your day. I enjoyed this as always. It's such a fun midweek break for me, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. And I look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great rest of your week.